State House studio in Montgomery. I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Today was committee day in the Alabama legislature, and a busy one at that. We'll start our coverage in the Senate Education Budget Committee, which held a public hearing on the Education Trust Fund budget and related bills. No vote was taken on the budget. That's likely to happen next week. But today, the committee heard from advocates hoping to get funding added to the budget. Child care advocates say that daycare centers are facing a double whammy of COVID resources drying up and inflation raising costs. And those fighting child hunger are asking for a state investment in a summer feeding program that could pull down federal resources and provide food to low-income kids over the summer.
Privately operated child care centers in Alabama are in crisis. When COVID relief dollars dried up, parent co-pays for child care subsidies significantly increased. Our parents are struggling to pay their co-pays because the post-COVID co-pay model did not factor in inflation. Our families are making more money and receiving less benefits.
We're really here to see that hungry people are fed. And we're asking you, as you look at the 2025 budget, to include the administrative portion of the cost that will allow the federal government to pay for summer meals in 2025 in the $80 to $100 million range. We suggest to you that there's no more worthy recipient than a school-age child during the summer. They don't have any control over their plight. They just know they're hungry.
Surely we can get, whether it's $8 or $9 million to feed these starving children. And I want to say this sitting here is that I am one, it's not so much as a big deal to anybody else, but I'm just speaking publicly to say this. I'm supporting y'all 110%. And we're going to feed these children, or they're going to drag me from that mic with a chain all the way out to the parking lot.
Again, no vote was taken to advance the budget, but that could come as soon as next Tuesday. The ETF has already passed the House. Things got pretty heated in that same committee when legislation on the issue of paid paternal leave came up. Lawmakers advanced a substitute legislation that would grant education employees 6 weeks of paid leave after having or adopting a child. But after the vote, Senator Vivian Figures realized that what passed was not as expansive as the original bill that she sponsored. That bill would have granted 12 weeks of paid paternal leave and would have included miscarriages and stillbirths. Chairman Arthur Orr explained that the scaled-back version put it more in line with what's being considered for non-education state employees. But Figures said she felt misled and disrespected.
This substitute brings the state employees and education employees to be the same. And I know that with the Shaver bill, those terms were kind of hammered out with the personnel department and others, but just going to treat everyone the same.
I was under the impression when I talked to you, Senator Orr, that the difference was going to be in the number of weeks that they had, but my bill included both the male, the mother and the father. It included for the birth of a child, a live child, the birth of a stillborn child, a miscarriage, as well as adoption.
I've got no objection passing it out as substituted. And then...
No, sir. I don't ask for much around here. I really don't. And I sure as hell don't raise a lot of hell like I could. But for you to totally disrespect me after I humbly and respectfully asked you just to pass my bill out, you have the power to put it on a special order or not. Although I'm on Rules Committee, but I don't have a vote on that either. But just let me know that I am totally disappointed in all of you, and that you are putting me in a position to vote no on my own bill.
Another touchy subject in a Senate committee today. Lawmakers on the Fiscal Responsibility and Economic Development Committee held a public hearing on legislation that would require smartphone manufacturers to activate obscenity filters on any device sold in Alabama. The goal is to protect minors from pornographic material. But those representing the cell phone industry said it's not that easy.
That we can do our part to prevent. Are we going to stop 100%? No. Are the filters going to stop 100%? No. But we should do our part. We should do what we can.
BCA is certainly supportive of measures to protect consumers, but not at the expense of business and our economic progress. HB 167 is another instance of legislation that mandates certain businesses be the solution to a problem that they are not responsible for creating.
And I'm all for commerce, and I will go to the mat working to make Alabama competitive and the best place to live. This is something, in my opinion, we simply must do.
I think if it was, easy to implement, it would be already done. I think the reason why we are opposed is because it is difficult to implement, just on a state-by-state basis, on the, age verification. How do we verify the age of these children when they receive a phone?
No vote was taken on the bill, but that should happen when the committee reconvenes next week. The House Economic Development and Tourism Committee today considered legislation that would establish the governing structure of the Alabama Farm Center, allowing the Alabama Farmers Federation to move forward with its plans to build a world-class farm center at Hallmark Farms in Jefferson County.
Opportunity to develop a Alabama Farm Center for all livestock shows, rodeos, and things like that for kids to have outings there and dealing with agricultural interest. So it's located in Jefferson County, and this legislation today formed a corporation, the articles to do that, to form an authority to operate, run, and determine construction needs within that facility. The amendment is something that explains the minority membership of that board, and it gives a minority leaders in the House and in the Senate an opportunity to make a list of names for the governor to pick from their members, and also it gives one of the appointees from the Commissioner of Agriculture gets a list from the Alabama A&M and Tuskegee Ag departments as to who they would like on the committee.
The bill was approved and now goes to the full House. In the House Judiciary Committee today, lawmakers considered legislation that would allow state income tax credits for those who donate to pregnancy resource centers. Bill sponsor Representative Jamie Keel said it was simply a way to encourage support for pregnancy resource centers or residential maternity wards. But some Democrats on the committee saw a connection to the abortion issue because pregnancy resource centers do not provide or counsel abortions.
House Bill 356 is a tax credit for pregnancy crisis centers. We passed this bill out of this committee and in the House last year. It failed to pass the Senate, and so I'm back asking again to help mothers and expectant mothers and mothers who have already given birth in a critical time in their life. We're asking for really a hand up here to help those folks. Just like last year, the amendment allows mobile clinics to also participate, is what the amendment does.
That bill advanced and now goes to the full House. A joint committee of House and Senate members met today to hear from experts in other states about the prospect of expanding Medicaid, or something akin to it. Alabama is one of 10 states that has not expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, but discussions are ongoing about a public-private partnership that would leverage federal Medicaid dollars to offer low-income Alabamians private health insurance. Arkansas recently enacted a similar plan, and so lawmakers and cabinet members from that state offered their advice. The panel also heard from leaders from North Carolina, the latest state to expand Medicaid.
I thought it was incredibly smart that they asked Arkansas and North Carolina to come in and just talk about the ways that they had chosen to do their Medicaid expansions, just to learn more about it. So it was really just giving them information. When a state decides it wants to go down a path of changing its Medicaid coverage, expanding it, or changing it, adding services, that state has to design it in a way that works for the actual state. You can't just come in and copy Arkansas exactly or copy North Carolina exactly. Every state's different, and every Medicaid program is different.
An update on the gambling issue. Last night, we heard from a Senate Republican on the conference committee tasked with negotiating a compromise between the House and Senate gambling bills. Today, we heard from a House Democrat on that committee. Representative Sam Jones said lawmakers continue to work toward that compromise, but that nothing is certain.
The committee is working together very well. We have discussed the differences between the two versions, the House bill and the Senate bill, and some of them were pretty vast differences. I think that I'm confident that some of those we can overcome. I think that we are working toward overcoming those, and I'm very positive about our ability to produce a product. There have been some working meetings between the various members, but as far as having a public open meeting of the committee, that has not taken place yet, but it will be taking place.
Coming up next, I'll speak with House Rules Chairman Joe Lovvorn about where we stand in the session and his legislation regarding fentanyl education. After that, Melea Stevens of the Wellspring Christian Clinic joins me to talk about that cell phone porn filter bill. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Joe Lovvorn from Auburn, Chairman of the House Rules Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Speaking of the Rules Committee, people may not be familiar. I mean, that's the committee that really decides how bills move and flow and really sets the agenda for each day in the House. So now that we've only got 6 more legislative days left, where are we in terms of all that legislation? Because it seems like things can bottleneck this late in the session.
Certainly, every session there's a bottleneck towards the end of the session when everyone's trying to get their priorities passed. This session we've taken up pretty much every controversial issue in the history of the state, and so that makes the bottleneck even tighter. And so now we're getting towards the end of the session where House members are pushing to get their bills through the House so they have a chance to get through the Senate. Senate members are trying to get their Senate bills passed on the Senate floor. But now we're sort of even with what's passed both houses. We've got, I think, 25 House bills yesterday have passed both chambers and 21 Senate bills have passed both chambers. So we're right in line with even flow, and what you'll see over the next couple of days is the House passes as many House bills as they can, the Senate passes as many Senate bills as they can, and then we will switch over to Senate bills for the remainder of the session, and the Senate will in turn switch over to House bills. So we try to get those bills to the governor that are our priority. And our job in the Rules Committee is to try to work with the Speaker and try to figure out what those priorities are for the members and try to move as much legislation to the floor as we can.
Sometimes this late in the session, it leads to kind of late nights because you do have a lot of legislation to go through, and that leads to debate and bills. Last night was kind of late.
It was, and I commend my Rules Committee because once we're done on the floor for the day, that's when Rules meets. So everyone's getting ready to go home. We're just starting our meeting. And so Rules Committee stays over, my staff stays to make sure the calendar's prepared to send out for the people to know what we're going to do the next legislative day. And so it's even later nights with rules. And so it's okay. That's just part of the business and what we signed up for. But I applaud my committee for making those late nights even later.
A big job, to say the least. But that's not your only job. You're still a state representative. You're pushing the legislation. You have this one having to do with fentanyl education, and you've got a personal history with this. Talk about the Price-Hornsby Act.
Certainly. Price Hornsby was a 17-year-old young man that went to Auburn High School, and he was looking at the future, was looking at maybe a service academy and trying to set up what he wanted to do for his life. And he had made a mistake and trusted someone, and he was having trouble relaxing and sleeping, and he took a pill from someone that he trusted and to try to relax, and it ended up having a toxic dose of fentanyl attached, and he passed. And in fact, my career in the fire service, his death was one of the last calls I responded to.
Goodness.
And as a father of teenage boys, it really hit home. And when I discuss where we have these type of situations, people think of the lower income part of town or someone laying in an alley. No, these are astute, well-doing young men and women that just make a mistake. And and unfortunately, it's not just where you may have a little too much alcohol one night, or you may take a drug where you have a bad night. No, it's typically fatal when you're dealing with fentanyl and when someone can make that mistake. And so with Texas and some other states are trying to step up what our school systems are doing as far as educating our young men and women. And so our goal is to take this, parlay it into our school system, try to get more in-depth dive down of the dangers of fentanyl. And the Hornsby family was very good to work with. We wanted to personalize this, put a name on it, so this means something, this means to a life, and we hope to honor Price's legacy so maybe he can save the life of other children out there.
That's an interesting point, because I remember, Anaya's law, right? I mean, putting a name to it really brings it home and makes it personal. But yeah, talk about this fentanyl thing, because as you said, this isn't, folks snorting up sometimes or whatnot. It's things like Xanax or Adderall that are pretty common medications that they're basically fake pills, right? They've been laced with fentanyl to make them more powerful or something, but folks may not know what they're getting from some dealer somewhere.
That's certainly, and that people say that what's in the amount of fentanyl that could be in a sugar packet could kill up to 500 people.
Wow.
And so when you're talking about 3 grains of salt worth of fentanyl, think of that dose. That's a toxic, deadly dose. And so you're not there's not some lab making this pill. You've got some drug dealer with a pill stamper that you can buy on the internet making these pills. So when they're measuring out those doses, they want to make it as potent as possible to try to make their drug popular. And so that balance gets off. And so Adderall is one of the most common ones sold now because people are trying to focus, trying to get their day going. They may not can get Adderall from going through the medical person, but so they get it off the street, and that's when those toxic levels of fentanyl can arrive, and when we have those horrific deaths. And it's in your nicer neighborhoods. It's in your kids that are really striving to the future. It's not usually your problem kids that end up getting the toxic dose.
Well, education is so important. So I think this bill is through the House. Where is it in the process?
It is in the Senate now, and Senator Hovey is carrying it he's a former firefighter and from Auburn, so it's very personal to him as well with the Hornsby family. And we look forward to, I haven't run into any opposition. It's out of committee in the Senate, and we hope to get this bill passed in the next few days from both houses.
Have you spoken with maybe the education department or educators about some of the best practices in terms of how to connect with youth? I'm just thinking back to like your Brain on Drugs commercials, or Just Say No, that may not have been as effective. Maybe we're better at it now at connecting with youth.
Well, certainly Dr. Mackey's office has been wonderful to work with, very open with conversation. He brought in their staff that really works, and we talked about how can this plug in and play. So we're trying to add this on as an additional push with a deeper conversation. And my wife used to be head of the Safe and Drug-Free Schools for Auburn City Schools, and so talked with her a lot about how that would impact the school system. And Mackey's office is very excited about implementing this and trying to find some avenues to get this information out there, because we can't talk enough about it. Just going through this bill with teenage boys at home, I've had multiple conversations, and because you can't talk enough, because once the accidents happened, it's too late. And so having these conversations, driving it home with these students is so important, and we can't say enough about it.
Well, we want to be a part of that conversation. I appreciate you coming on and sharing about it. We'll look forward as this bill comes along. Well, thanks again for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Harper Lee is best known as the author of one of the most affecting and widely read books of American literature, To Kill a Mockingbird. The native Alabamian drew deeply from her coming-of-age years in her small hometown of Monroeville. The 1961 Pulitzer Prize-winning novel explores the dimensions of prejudice, hate, loyalty, and love through the eyes of a young girl as she awakens to the complexities of human nature and its capacity for both good and evil. The film version of To Kill a Mockingbird underscored the success of the novel with its own success. Both novel and film continue to hold the public and academia's interest. Lee was widely recognized throughout her life, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2007 and the 2010 National Medal of Arts.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is Melea Stevens of the Wellspring Christian Clinic. Melea, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're here in the State House to support Representative Sell's bill. It has to do with protecting minors from online pornography, particularly on cell phones. Talk about this bill and why you're supportive.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're here to support HB 167, which is the Children's Device Protection Bill. And simply all that it does is require device manufacturers, which are Apple, Google, and Amazon, to turn on pre-existing filters that are already in smartphones and tablets. This bill only applies to smartphones and tablets. We know from research that 47% of young children accidentally stumble upon pornography, unwanted exposure to pornography on a smartphone or tablet. And because of that, and because today's pornography is mainstream pornography, is hardcore, violent, very addictive material, it's creating so many harms for children, and it's illegal, actually. And so this bill not only would better protect children across the state of Alabama, automatically turning on existing filters, but it also upholds our existing state and federal obscenity laws.
I see. So the filter is already there, it's just not switched on.
Exactly.
So if I go buy an iPhone, or if I'm a 16-year-old kid and I go buy an iPhone, it's not, I have to proactively do that.
Yes, and unfortunately in some of these devices, it's 30 steps deep into the device. So it's very complicated for even involved caregivers, and unfortunately a lot of the children in our state don't have involved caregivers, so they don't even have a chance at better protection. So this bill would particularly protect young children, and adults are given a passcode to turn the filter off if they want to. They can have access to whatever, but it's just going to activate the existing filters, which are actually really effective filters.
Interesting. Now, the other side of this, from the manufacturers I've heard, say, look, nobody wants children to be exposed to this material, but there are some impracticalities. Like if it's only Alabama, how do you, at the manufacturing level, do that only for Alabama versus other states, and just sort of some technical impracticalities. How do you respond to that?
They try to make it sound like it's technically infeasible when it's actually very feasible and it's very simplistic. We've talked to engineers, software engineers with Apple and other companies that say this is a very simple software update. It would take them a matter of hours because of biometrics and geolocation devices. Like when you cross a state line, your phone automatically knows, if you go into daylight savings time changes and things like that. It's very simple to make things specific. In terms of, it's just like a simple software update you get on your phone all the time. It's not anything complicated. We know that's the truth, but they want to protect their profit target, which is our children. They don't want to lose access to our kids because they get money and data, and they just don't like to be regulated. They don't like to be told anything, even if it's in favor of our kids. It's passed unanimously in Utah a few weeks ago.
I was going to ask what other states have done this.
Yeah, it recently passed unanimously just a few weeks ago in Utah, this updated version of this bill. It passed, it's going really well through Arizona, it's in Maryland, I think South Carolina, it's in a handful of other states, it's progressing well. It passed 98-0 in the House 3 weeks ago here in Alabama. We hope to see that kind of support in the Senate. And when I speak across the state on these issues as a marriage and family therapist and a board member with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, I speak on the harms of pornography to kids. And whether you're Democrat, Republican, or anywhere in between, parents want to see this bill passed. They are seeing the damaging effects to our kids and to this generation. And they're all like, why have we not already done this?
So what do you think about the prospect? I know it passed unanimously out of the House. We've got, after today, 6 days left. What are the prospects moving forward? Because I know this bill's been around a few years. It has, and this is an even stronger, updated version this year. We fight big tech in the porn industry and then other entities that kind of come in front of them. So we, again, while most legislators are on board with this, we'll have a few people who, listen to the efforts of the opposition. And so hopefully it'll do like last year and make it through committee easily, and then we just hope to make it to the final floor for a vote. That's the only reason we didn't pass last year, is it just wasn't given a chance at a final vote. But we believe we have the votes, we just have to get it there. Interesting. Well, look, thanks for coming on the show and explaining some of this, and we'll be following this bill. Thank you so much. That's our show for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at the same time with more coverage of the Alabama Legislature here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.